I'm sharing my screen. Please confirm once you are able to see the screen.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So today I just opened the database thing. So I'm in some other place. I think I came out. Okay. So I have a putty connected. This is where my database is. I don't know the visibility of the same. I'll check that I can change any of the font or new session, saved session, reset terminal. Okay, I'll write it in Notepad and copy it here. That is much better. So right now I just created a table database called Upskill. I think you are all going through the database class as well. So database called Upskill. In that database, I want to have a new table. That is, first is we want to store the users. So for storing the users, the most important thing for us is one, we need to have the username, that is email in our case. So I just create a table. I use the word say users. That is the table name. All when I register the user, they will come inside here. First is I want to create a UID, UUID. UUID, there are multiple ways it can be created. Either it can be UUID or it can be your own created ID that is unique, or you can have system generated series of numbers. So I just go with series of number ID equal to, it's a big int, which I call it as big serial, because automatically when I say serial, it will create a series of number and it is a not null and it has to be unique. Primary key. I use the word primary key here. That means primary key means automatically it is unique and index is also created against that ID. So you have two possibilities when I say unique or primary key. So that is done. So email is our next, it's a varchar, not null. Then I have a name of the person. So name of the person, right now I give it as a not nullable. Then we have a password, confirm password. The password is the one which I want to keep it. So it is also a varchar. In reality, passwords are not stored, are not supposed to be stored in the plain text. So this is my created on, which is default to now. So that is defaulted to now. The password are the one which you are not supposed to keep it in the varchar. We'll talk about that little later. You are supposed to store the hash value only in the database, because you are not supposed to store the plain text, because anybody can see others' password, which is against the personal identification problems. So against that concept, so we are not supposed to store anything in the plain text. But for our industry immediate learning, we are not worried about that. In reality, what we generally do is we call it as password hash. This is how we create. So we use the word p hash or password hash, and we create one more called salting. So password or hash using a salt, and then only I can check. So I create these two things. So it is the hashed value of the password. So we will not store the password directly in the table as a plain text. But right now I'm not worried on that. So I'm just creating the table users. So I execute that here so that the table is created now. So slash C, I'm going to the, sorry, I created a wrong place table. Drop table users, because I created in the wrong place. So first is I connect to that database Upskill, slash C for connect. So connected. Now I create the table. So I slash D, all tables, it will be listed. There is a upskill. There are a lot of tables are already there. So many tables are there. Oh, I'm sorry. I'll rename the table now. How come bugs, Stack Overflow. Upskill, when I created the table, what happened? Create database upskill. Okay, I'll use this different name. Upskill full stack development. I create this way table. Okay, I created a table. I make sure now the table is empty. So /c upskill full stack development. So it is connected /d. It should be any reason for all this. Default it is all created. Usually it will be empty. /b. I think these are all bugs related. Owner is bugs. Okay, let that be. Let the table be. Our table is created means I am fine. So I create, as long as it creates my table, I am perfectly fine. There may be some cron running behind. I don't have to worry about. So /c upskill I'll go. That is that original table name. And I just go with /d. I created a table name called users. So I just check that users table. So users table is available. You can see that users table, ID, email, name, password created on. These are all the things that we created and that is available. Primary key is ID. So it has created an index for that primary key as well. So these are all, you might have seen it as per the part of your database also. So our aim is to make sure we are able to create the user first through the node, then integrate the user from end user, that is Angular material, to this through this Node.js. Node.js is acting as a REST API now. So that is our aim. So first I created a database. I created a table. So upskill is the database name. So there is no change in that. I'll go back to my program code node. So database. So I just do one thing. I'll go to Notepad. The script also, I'll just give a copy of the script. So first is I did create database upskill semicolon, then /c upskill. This /c and all, it will work only if you are in the admin, that is console log. Otherwise, this may not work. I'm copying pasting this into our chat questionnaire. I'm pasting this in the questionnaire so that you can take a copy of this. So first is I created a database. I moved to the connected to the database, and then I created a users table. In that ID, email, name, password created on is appearing. So this is how I just created a table. We are able to do that. I want to now work on this. So when we are doing it in the model here, so this is the connection screen. Upskill is the database name I have given. User, in my case, user is the Postgres. Password is whatever we have given, that password you are giving. This is the connection string for us. This is already done. We tested this also. So now, generally, any node or any application behind the scene, there is called controller, there is called model. So how do we create your model, controller, etc. is very, very critical. There are models. Models are nothing but holding the database query. Controller is nothing but the business logic layer. which is nothing but all your logics are sits in the controller. Then your routing area. Routing is nothing but an entry point. Routing is our routing is the API.ts. This place is exposed to the outside world. When they connect with this routing, that is, it is exposed to the external world, not the function, but when I'm routing it. When I route it, it is exposed to the external world. So when it is exposed to the external world, it is not safe to put all the business logic in that. So what we do is, this is the front end layer. That means this is the exposed layer to the outside world. So we take it one layer below. We call it as business layer. And from business layer, we take it to the DB layer. So we don't take it directly. We don't code everything in the one place, even though it is allowed. Right now, you can see that I did the query here directly. This is not the way you should code. So we are now creating 3 layers. In TS server, I have one is route layer. That is, instead of API, I can call it as route. I rename this as route. I rename this for time being. I just rename this as route, so there is no confusion. Route layer. Then I create one more layer called new folder. That is called controller. Controller is the place where all your business logics are written. Next is next layer. I want to create it as new folder. That is my model. This is where all DB scripts are written in this model. So only DB script should be there. You should not have a if then else kind of business logic should not come in the model. So that is the thumb rule we generally follow in this industry. Whether it is right, wrong, etc., we are not questioning that, because there are bigger communities who decided that MVC is the best way of dealing with model view controller. That is how the entire coding has to follow. So we just follow that. So we create a model as a directory, we create controller as a directory, we create router as a directory. Router is the entry point. That is the one which is exposed through this index.ts. This is the one which is getting exposed. Now, instead of API now, because I renamed it, I have to use route. Right? If you don't understand this, please make sure /, that means one root above in the same place. Index is in the same location. / is in the same location. Route is the directory that I want to use. In that, API is the one which I want to use. API is my module, right? Route is the path. So route is the path. API is the module. This is what I want to use as my, I loaded that module as part of API. Right? In this API, I'm using this API. Whenever I get the route / API, I want to now come to this API. This API will take me to the route. This is what you will show outside world. Outside world, you will show the name as API. Inside, you show the name as the directory. Route, and then loading the API. So what you show in the output outside world is, it can be one. What you use it inside, it can be different. And usually in this layer, since it is exposed to the outside world, you never have any constants or anything in that. You keep it very safe. It just takes the data in and you just respond to that. And all other thing, you'll do it in the intermediate layer. That is the layer we created as controller as a layer, which does all the business logic. Model is the layer which connects to the database. So in our case, the first thing that I'm going to create. So models, when we create, it is advisable to create it as a class so that I don't have to, I just use the class and all the methods inside the class are available to my wherever I'm using that class. So use the class as a direct candidate rather than individual functions you write. So don't write individual functions, create it as a class, collection of the class you call whatever the name you want to give it as a collection, you can give it as a collection. That class, you can use it as part of your exposure candidate. Whether you want to write all the queries inside one model folder or you want to create subfolder, I leave it to you. In certain cases, very difficult to decide which query has to go to which component, which folder. I leave it to you to decide that. Always there is a common things. So there are several ways it can be done. One is, especially when you are dealing with such models, you can deal it with like different components. For example, I have an employee module, separate flow, user module, separate flow. That means end user module. End user modules, that means what I'm trying to say is, Flipkart, you take a Twitter, you are signing it as a Facebook. Most of you will be using a Facebook. You have your own credentials, you log in as that credential. So we are all call it as users. Facebook employees are there. They have certain privileges to access certain accounts. So they have their own privileges. Both application can be same. Both node application may be same. So user will go through one path, where Facebook employees will go into another path. So this also can be defined as a two different folders. So model, all users connectivity, you go with one model name. The people who are employees, they can manage in their own way. So model, you can treat it with the multiple folders. Routing can be different. Routing validations can be different. Both are using the same application, but you will go through different flow. Another user will go through another flow. That is all possible. That is all easy to do in Node.js without any problems. Okay. So right now we are having only one component. Right now we are going to create. So what I do inside the model is, common queries. I just say that means it is applicable to all the people. It is not specific to any one individual. It is applicable to all the people. So again, the users table, I'm retaining one users table for all, whether it's an employee, whether it's a thing, then you maintain one employee. No, you don't want to maintain in that way. You want to external users, you want to keep it separate. Employees, you want to keep it separate. That is also you can decide. So whatever the way you decide, it is up to you to deal with. So I create one new file here. Again, it is a TS file. This TS file, I can say users.ts. Anything that is related to users, I want to come to this TS file. That is my module. So this module, what you want to do? I want to create, what is that I want to do it here? First is I want to connect it to the database. That's a primary activity of this model user.ts. So users, I use that plural. So users.ts. So all the users related component, I want to bring it over here, right? So what I want to do here, first is I want to connect to the database is the primary aim. So how do I connect to the database? So import. So database, we already created a common function. So import from dot slash to stage above, right? And inside the config, I have that it's a usable component. So in this component, I'm using the function called fndb query. So this is the function. This is the module. I want to use it here because that's the primary thing I want. I don't want anything else. Here my aim is to connect to the database and return the data, whatever I fetch from the database. Next, I want to create a class. As I said, I don't want to create without a class. I want to create it as a class. So class creation, we have already seen in the previous thing. So I just open any of the file. Not here, please. Don't change anything here. New window. Any class, you can have a constructor. All that things are possible. I'm just everywhere, wherever we create, we go with that. So there is a model here. So this model, you can see there is a user DB. So this user DB, there are a lot of codes are there. I just go to the top. So import, I just use the class name here, copy paste the syntax, first primary syntax. And I want to do the export because I want this class to be available from the external world. So I use the word user model. So I want to use the word users model. So there are multiple. So since it is a class, I'm using the capital letter U as a capital letter. So what is the, so this is users table. So there is one more called common functions. Anything common, like checking the DB, etc. That's a common function. I create in a separate model. I don't want to put it in the same file. So I say common function. All common, okay, db.ts. I rename that users also. Common db.ts. This users also rename it users db, so that we know that it is the DB related, so that we don't get confused. Controller, I name it as controller. So common DB, I again copy this. Common DB is also, again, it is supposed to access the DB. So I have that FN query. Instead of users model, I call it as common. You can use common DB as well. DB query, common DB query. You can rename here users DB, users DB model. Instead of model, I can say DB query. Name is purely your suggestion, your decision. So in common DB, I want to access, I want to create check DB is my check DB. Please remember, when you are creating such hierarchy thing, most important thing that you need to note down is this common DB should not call the user DB. So common DB can be used by any number of lower hierarchy, but common DB in turn should not use the one that whoever is calling, that should not, that guy should not use this. Then it becomes a conflict. So you have to prepare this class in such a way, there is no one guy is calling another guy is calling again this guy. That should not be a cyclic event. I am calling you, you are calling me. No, that is not allowed. I allow you call me, no issues for me, but I should not call you at any cost. That means that is called, we call it as a common. Common can be used by everybody, but common should not use anybody else as a child. Then it becomes a problem. It becomes a cyclic issue. So very important when you are creating multiple classes, multiple subfolders, etc. But so I call it as check DB. That is my functionality. So check DB, it is an asynchronous. Always I use asynchronous because otherwise I need to handle the promise. I always handle it. So let query text. There is no parameter here. Query text, select. Now there are different syntax followed by multiple people. So you need to decide whether you want to use all small letters or you want to use capital and small. Select is a system function. So any system function, they may use capital letters. Any variables, now is a variable. So it is a now is a function inside the Postgres. So they use the now as a small letter. So it doesn't matter. So there is no parameter. Then I have to call the function fn db query. It is supposed to be returning the value fn db query. Within this, if I open, it will show me the method name. So method name, I call it as common db query dot or check db dot. Check db is my method name. It is in quotes, check db, which is in quotes. If you want to use the class name also, you can use the class name also, so that there is no confusion if multiple classes is having the same name. followed by query text. So query text is nothing but QRY text, right? So after that, query param is we returned it as what do you call? Query param is a non-mandatory optional field, so I don't have to give it here. So what job it does is take the query, return the query. That's all it does. No validation, nothing. So I'm not doing any validation. Then think about whether to use try catch or not. So try catch, in case if you are doing any computation, anywhere variable assignments, that variable can be undefined, then you need to use try catch. If not, you don't have to worry about. In my case, select now is the script, and the script parser file, it will be decided by the FNDB query. In FNDB query, we already handle all types of exceptions. Because of that, I don't need a try catch here. Because I have an exact saying why I don't need a try catch. Because this script, wherever I call, this will never crash. Now, we created a model now. Model should not be directly accessible in the routing. It is very dangerous. So we need to go through a business logic layer. So that business logic layer is nothing but controller. In controller, there need not be any relationship between business layers and the controllers. Sorry, business logic layer and DB layer. There need not be any relation, but you can maintain the relation as well. So you want to keep all your common functionalities under one controller, you can keep that. But when you are doing it, you need to ensure that that guy doesn't call another controller inside. So one should not be depending on other. One should always be a receiving end or consuming end, either of the two. I should receive data from others or I should be giving data to others, either of the two. So I should not one calling you and you calling me is not allowed. That is, I'm repeating again and again because that is called conflict. It will not throw the error at the compilation, but it might throw error differently at different places. Okay. Now in controller, I create a file. I create now common cntrl controller.ts file. Common controller, differentiating between a common db.ts and common controller.ts. Again, controller also you make it as a class, collection of class. So what I need in controller, what are all the service I need in controller? Right now, I don't need anything. If at all I need, I will add it later. So first is I just put an export class name. So I call it as common controller. In that way I can give. So I give this. Constructor is always required. Constructor is nothing but anything that you want to predefine, right? You want to pass the variable, right? You want to pass the something predefined, then this constructor can be used effectively. If you don't have any input parameter or anything, you just leave it as constructor and leave it as an empty tag. In my case, I'm not, I'm making, it is all independent. Each class entity, that is component in the class, is an independent element. So in my case, checkDB is my job. So checkDB is my function. Again, I assume that it is an asynchronous function. Asynchronous. You can use either DB capital. I prefer camel casing because it's only a function. No input. No input. There is no input parameter. Now I want to call the model now. So model is not accessible here. So the model common db.ts, I want to access it here because I want to call that query there. That is there in that model. So how do I call? That is what you need to now import. How the imports are decided is through that. So I want to now in straight in the same hierarchy, common controller hierarchy, nothing is there. I put double dot slash. I'm going above controller in that layer. In that layer, model is there. I choose the model. In model, which one you want to use? I want to use common DB. In common DB, whatever the class is already exported, that is available here. Right? So once you use the class, I want to instantiate the class. Because it is a class, I need to instantiate a class here. Constant, I say common. It is a, please note, after instantiation, I'm using the camel chase2 differently. So common controller. Common controller, new of, then that whatever I use on the top, common DB query. Because there is no constructor which this doesn't have any parameter, I just call an empty function. So this common controller now holding all values of all components of the class inside this common controller, and that common controller is what I want to use it here. Let result equal to await of, because that is the promise guy, await of common controller dot check db. Now you can see that the check db got listed here. So if I don't use await, I need to use the promise dot then check db dot then. Right? Check db is basically a promise. It is a promise. Anything you deal with the third party, it is a promise. Since I use await, I'll get the net result. Net result is success, row count, rows, message, connection error, whatever it is. So check DB is this. So in case check DB is failing, right? What needs to be done? What are all the different possibilities now? So all this you need to take care when you are doing a programming. Positive condition, negative condition, and what happens if there is in case of negative condition. You want to tell users to resend the data, or you want to keep it in the queue, and then as soon as the connection establishes, you want to go ahead, or you want to crash the system. Because we are dealing with a third party candidate. Here in our case, Postgres. Postgres is sitting somewhere outside. That Postgres, whether it is down or whether it is up, I don't know. So as per me, if it is down, I am giving the failure call connection error. If connection error is there, I know that there is a problem. There are two types of problem. One is connection error, another is query error. Query error, nothing can be done. I cannot retry. That is needs to be corrected. So I need to pass the message. There is a query error, means query error I need to pass. So first, result is success or not. Result dot success or not. If I say success, right? If by default bringing in success, in our case, there cannot be a possibility of result coming up as undefined, but still he is maintaining the question mark, let it be. If result colon dot success, I want to, nothing to worry, I just return to my API. So success true. So this is what we generally follow. You can follow your own way. Row count we generally give, which is a common thing, which is nothing but the result of result dot row count. That is part of the result generally. Next is rows, the return value, result dot rows. Right? If we go back to the PSQL, this is what I'm talking about. Success equal to true, row count equal to query result dot row count, rows equal to result dot rows. So this is the candidate. I'm using it outside there. So this is what if it is a success equal to true. That means there is no exception in the query or connection. There is no exception. In such cases, this is what it is. So that is what I am going it in the control. In case it is else. Else there are two possibilities. One possibility is One possibility is I can have a query mistake. That is this area, 15. Another is connection error. That is the another possibility. Two possibilities are there. What do you want to handle? I want to handle now result dot connection error. In case of connection error, what do you want to do? I want to keep checking this DB, ensure until the connection is up and running. Until connection is up and running, I want to ensure that I keep checking it. Then it is called set timeout. How frequently you want to test it? I want to test it, say, every 30 seconds. It is in millisecond. Every 30 seconds, I want to check this dot check DB. Now it is within the class. I'm calling the same function recursive. This is called recursive function. So I want to check the DB and then say, meantime, we are sending a message, right? Return success. Return has to be end. Return should not be in the top. Return has to be in the end. Right? Or I don't want to return anything now. I don't want to, I just keep trying it. But I have to return something. I will come to that. Okay. Without return, I cannot come out of the loop. So I just say return success equal to false, right? Message I will call it as connection error. Spelling mistake on return. So connection error. So okay, that's all. That is the DB connection error. You can say DB connection error. Please try after some time. Okay, that is else if. So what it does is, in case of connection error, it checks this DB after 30 seconds. The event is established, but I return the call saying the DB connection error. What else? Then there is one more possibility is the query error. That is nothing but I don't have to do anything. I just have to return. That's all. Return success false. Right? Message. I come back to the message here. So message is the word I use. I don't use rows or row count. There is a message. So I need to use message here. Message here. So this message I use here. Message equal to colon, right? Result dot message. Again, it can be undefined. That's why question mark has come. So I just say message. So there is a differentiation I'm doing. If you get the rows, that means you got the real event because it's an array of event. If you don't get the rows, you get a message. So false always get a message. For true, you get a row count and rows. So these two are the possibilities. This is my business component. So all logic can be a bigger code, it can be a 2-page code, it can be a 100-page code, it doesn't matter. So this is the business logic layer, right? As far as Node is concerned, you will not write elaborate thing inside the code. You don't do it usually. So because Node is a single thread concept. So if at all you do it, anything that you think that it is a high CPU intensive job, like for loop, doing for to millions of records, looping it, managing it, use the separate CPU or separate thread. We'll come to that later if time permits. That is all comes as part of the separate subject anyway. Now, this is the check DB. We are doing that. Now, I need to use this in my API component. Here, I don't want this. I want to do that from here. And I want to trigger this check DB before I start any activity. I want to check this DB, ensure my connection is there. So what I can do here is, I can say here, let is DB connection is DB connected. I say false. Right? I say false. So what I'll do here is, if it is there, I say is DB connected true. Variable, I'm making it true. So if it is not, I'm making the variable as false. For query error, I should not make that DB as false. So for query error, I always make is DB as DB connected as true, because it's a query error. DB is connected. It's a mistake of the query. So when I want to take this DB query outside world, then so I can now instantiate whenever. Okay, I'll come. Next is I want to get this DB variable outside my function. Then I call it as, I don't use anything, get is DB connected. I already use the word is DB get. I use the, so that I don't confuse with a variable. Get is DB connected. Is DB connected? I just, it's a get. I call it as return is DB connected. It's a variable. Return true or false. So if it is false, so what do you want to do? So I can give an instantiation here. If is DB connected is false, is not, then internally I can call check DB, so that it will continuously check the DB and it doesn't matter. It continuously check the DB. So I don't have to worry about it, right? So when you are doing it, there is already a guy who is checking the DB. So this guy also will check the DB. So you need to ensure that there is no multiple times checking is happening, etc., etc. If DB is not connected, and if the already DB check is on, I don't want to again call this function. So you can add multiple events like this. Is DB check running? By default, it is false. So is DB check running? I make it as say true. All this meticulously you need to plan when you are writing a code. You cannot just like that. So it is false here. It is true here. That means whenever this guy comes, it will automatically, it is checking every 15 minutes, right? So it is true here. And again, I copy paste here. It is a false here, right? So that means if not and not is DB checking. If these two are not running, then only you call. Otherwise, you don't call. So DB connected should be false. Is DB check running has to be false. Then only you call this check DB. Otherwise, you don't check DB. What it means is a DB connection, initially everything was fine. Suddenly DB connection is lost. So DB is down. So system doesn't know whether DB is connected or not connected. So you will execute a function. When you execute a function, it will come here. The query, return a query as false. When the return query as false, if that is a connection error, then you know that I need to call this function again and then make that loop activity started. So here there are two activities we are doing. One is check DB. Second is DB connected. Is DB connected is a property. It will just return a Boolean. You can see the return. Check DB is a promise. So check DB is a promise. The promise are used only if you use await. The promise will be reconciled. I should not use the asynchronous here. It is not correct. I should not use. Then it becomes a promise again. Again, it becomes a promise. So I should not use asynchronous there. So I should use it because I just return whatever is the variable here. I'm returning that variable. That is the job. In between, in case that variable is false and check is not running, I'm making sure I keep continuously checking in the behind, so that next time when it is up and running, my query is taken, so that I don't keep executing the query again and again when DB is not connected. So when DB is connected, I execute the query. When DB is not connected, I don't want to execute the query. So this guy will return me a Boolean. That return is either whatever the value that has got set here. So this will become true only if this condition check DB is false. If check DB is true, he will not be in the false condition. He will become true condition. So when this is false means my connection to the DB is failing. That's all it means. For query failure, we don't treat it as a DB disconnection error. So that is one of the reason why we maintain a connection error as a separate event. Connection error is done at the pool connect. So at this place only, this will get rejected. Here it will not get rejected. So you should differentiate between a pool connection, query error and the DB error. I stop at this point. Any queries, you let me know. I'll give you those files, components, then and there. So we created two models. One is this model. It is under common db.ds underneath model. I put that in my type screen. In my type screen, I give it here. PS server, then model, folder name, then I call it as common db.ps file. Inside that, this is the code. Okay, I pasted the code. I hope the code is full. Yeah, this is DB code. Second, we have a controller code. So controller code is again TS server, then controller, then common cntrl.ts file, common controller file. Inside that, I copy first db command. Up to variable, I copy it first. Up to variable declaration, I copy it first, paste it there. Second, I copy common this export function. Only export function I copy. Export function, only I copy the export function. So copied the export function, right? Inside the export function, I am copying the db function. db, it may not write full. So inside db, first if then else I'll use. First if then else, then else if, then else statement with ending of that particular functionality. Next comes your get db connected within the class, that function. So with that, we completed today. Tomorrow we'll see further integration. So very important, any questions, feel free to ask. If you don't have a questions, I leave it to you to proceed further. Try yourself to connect it in the API. How do you call this function, etc. You can try yourself. Put your hand. If you are able to succeed, well and good. Not succeeded, tomorrow anyway we are going to see. Right? Any other questions, please let me know. Otherwise, we can disconnect. Okay then, nothing is there. Okay then, thank you. I stop my share. You can stop your recording, please.